This podcast has been produced on the traditional lands of the Gadigal and Bidjigal peoples. From 2RPH, this is Passing Thoughts. I'm Rob Caldor. This is the podcast where we talk openly and honestly about death, dying, and everything in between. Later in this episode, I'll bring you the Before We Go segment where we explore some of the quirkier and more unexpected aspects of our final chapter. This one made me laugh, so stick around. Today's episode is with the feisty women of Cafe Mortal. We recorded this episode at Cafe Piatto in McMahon's Point, Sydney, where they meet regularly. Jane Mundy joins Hazel, Jude and Marg from Cafe Mortal and starts by asking Marg to describe the group's origins.
We three are a member of a group of physiotherapists who have been together since the 70s. Horrifying thought, really. We were in Canberra for some reason or other. Well, someone said, why don't we meet for lunch instead of for dinner? We were having regular dinners. And I lost it, to be honest, and said, no, we're not meeting for lunch. We can go out at night. Only old people only meet for lunch. And everyone went, ooh. And so that started a conversation in the group, really, about ageing and what does that mean and what does that look like for us as a group and as individuals. And from that, we morphed into a group. There were 5 of us because we decided we want to talk more about that and explore our feelings about ageing and the body and the brain and dementia and dying, really, and what does all that mean? What did it mean for us? So 5 of us, we 3 here, and one of our members is in the UK.
Hazel, can you tell us how the group works, how it's structured?
We made sure we had a commitment from each of us. Each session take on a responsibility for what we'd decided we're going to discuss. So it did have a format. It took a little bit of working out what was going to work best, particularly with the Zooming and making sure everybody had input.
So you have a particular focus each meeting.
Jude, who came up with let's follow the format of a particular book. And so to start with, we started with mortals and how the fear of death shaped human society, 2 Australian psychologists, and we basically started chapter by chapter and looked at the philosophical background of how it shapes human society and all the different culture, religion, different practices.
So there's a topic each session and you prepare for that. You read and you think and you come to the meeting to put your thoughts together.
We all did a whole range of reading. That led us to lots of other aspects that we were discussing, which was wonderful.
What were some of the topics that you've covered?
Religion was a big part, and different types of religion and the practices within that. There was just cultural differences that we looked at and thought about what the chapters in the Menzies book was presenting, which came from a very much a psychological aspect, but it really got us thinking. And then that took us through to Stoicism and the impact of that philosophy on people. So we spent a lot of time on the philosophical aspects of what it was that was causing a fear of death, perhaps, and then our personal, what our experiences have been and where we were sitting with how comfortable we were.
Jude, as far as personal experiences are concerned, I imagine because you've known each other for such a long time, in order to share those personal experiences, there's a lot of trust between you. Do you think that's a really important part of these kinds of groups?
Oh, I think so, absolutely. I think trust is very important, but also I think, 20 years ago we set up ground rules. In terms of these meetings, we do some preparation of our own reflections. Then we share what we want to share with the other members of the group. with the proviso that there's no interruption. Sometimes we've had to put a little, not exactly an egg timer, but some degree of control over the speaker. But that seems to have worked very well. But I think the most important thing is a real sense of mutuality, that people are genuine in their desire to share and just to expose themselves, I suppose, in order to consolidate or broaden their horizon of thinking. And in particular with the religious thing, in our group, the 5 of us had some sort of Christian upbringing. Whether we were part of that still or not, we still had those sort of kind of Christian values and so on. But this Mortal book explores Christianity, Islam, or the major religions. And then we were challenged really to say, well, where are we with all that? Or do we still believe in an afterlife, or are we 6 foot under when we die and that's it?
I did have a look at some of the notes from your early sessions, and something leapt out at me, which I think you'd written, Jude, which was this was like taking a plunge into the unknown in order to grow in understanding and acceptance of our inevitable death, and in turn to offer greater peace and comfort. And it is like a leap into the unknown, isn't it? It's the great unknown.
It's not so much about the death. It can be about the dying. And dying, can be a very lonely experience. It can be an awful experience, or it can be a wonderful experience.
There's quite a big movement worldwide now called the Death Cafe movement. I think it started in the UK probably 12 or so or more years ago. It's now in something like 70 countries, which is amazing, isn't it? But they operate slightly differently. It doesn't have any real structure. The cafes, just random people might arrive, and they don't have that bond that you people have had over decades. I wonder how difficult it would be to have these kinds of intimate conversations with people that you didn't really know.
For us, it was important that we know each other. And I think interesting that we had this Christian background and those values, because I was brought up a Catholic, strong Catholic, head of the parish council and, all those things. And now I think I don't believe in any of it anymore.
Do you feel that this involvement with the Cafe Mortal group has been a catalyst for that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So that's been a big loss in many ways for me. Yeah, oh dear, I'm going to cry. Sorry.
It also speaks to the power of this group.
Oh, yes. Well, and what we've read, we're now members of Go Gentle and Dying with Dignity, and, you listen to some of those webinars and you just think, it's all about the dying and then being able to die in a way that you want to. That was another big thing for me anyway, was that you were clear what it is would be okay and what would not be okay, so that the family would be able to go, oh, this is what she wants, we've got to fight for that, rather than, because you listen to some of these poor intensive care doctors who, will say, here's the person dying, and they say, no, we've got to just keep going and we can't let her mum or grandma, and it's just, you think, oh, really?
Cafe Mortal is not talking about death with people who are actually dying. It's really about normalising conversations about death as part of everyone's everyday life. Like we talk about the birth of a baby. Death is part of the spectrum of life, isn't it? Is that how you see it, Haze?
One of the things that was really revealed is that really it's only modern society where the medicalisation of death is, not many people witness death. It's all in a hospital, whereas it's not that long ago that death was normal. The person died with home, more people wanting it to be more part of everyday practice. That's part of it too, being able to recognise, well, it doesn't have to be in a hospital, but we have that backup, that in many cases that's the appropriate place, that's right. But if it's a natural death, there's great support for home care and palliative care. So that was also another extension. I mean, once we really delved into the philosophical component, we looked at the practical. What is palliative care? What is available? Doulas, all the things that today are out there. We wanted to know just how it all works.
Voluntary assisted dying?
Absolutely.
And having conversations with our children and our spouses and so on. It's such a complex, huge area. And the five of us all had, some similar priorities, but also different ones. But I think there is a positivity left, because I think in our last session the topic was acceptance and surrender. When there's that sense of acceptance, you can get on with living.
Exactly. That's important. It is all about enjoying this phase of our life as well.
If dying is part of living, why wouldn't you talk about it in the same way as you talk about living? Like, passing and then, kicked the bucket and carked it and so on. Why is death so hard for people to talk about?
From what we've read, all the major religions except Judaism and Shintoism, and they have spirits, even the kami, most of them you have to be scared of death. This is not a good thing because it's the afterlife. You're going towards something else, which is better. And so somehow it's made everybody absolutely terrified of dying. I did, as part of all of this, a 25-episode thing from Yale University, really interesting man called Shelley Kagan. And I thought, I'll listen to these. And, of course, it was really all about Socrates and Plato and so on, but about the soul. Is there a soul? Because if you don't believe there is a soul, you then tend to not need to have an afterlife. I don't know that I understood all of it. Some of it was quite challenging, but we had an excellent discussion on consciousness. What is consciousness? That was Susie, our compatriot from down south. She's an artist, and she's, of course, very interested in consciousness and how it impacts, her and creativity, etc. So that was fascinating, actually, and that got us reading a whole lot of other things around what is consciousness.
The idea of fear, that we're frightened of death for all sorts of different reasons, but there's a lot of research, isn't there, to show that the more you talk about it, the less fearful you are. Have you had any fear yourselves around the idea of dying?
Well, my mother had horrendous dementia, and her father, so yeah, I'm not happy about it at all, really.
No, well, I know.
Could I just say, I think in the talking is education, if you like, or the discovery of the exposing what you might be fearful of, and it's different for everyone. I think understanding that without complications of disease and chronic illness, death is a natural process, just like birthing, and there is a pattern that is very reassuring, that if you're kept comfortable, but even if you're not, if you may not need any medical intervention. And I'm lucky enough to have had that experience with my father particularly. He died at home with me. He didn't need any intervention. He was peaceful. And it was a natural process of, you could tell the stages he was in.
Hazel, had you been able to talk to him about dying?
No, but not as would in the same way as we have. But my parents were both medical practitioners, and I knew definitely what their wishes were. They didn't have any qualms about death, and my mother had died only 10 weeks earlier, and my parents were very connected, and my father just seemed to stop eating, but he also he was having little mini strokes apparently. But it was a very beautiful experience, I have to say. I couldn't have wanted him to keep on living, because I knew he wanted not to be here.
And I guess you don't want someone to die struggling, do you?
It's so much a situation as to whether it's possible for that process to happen. I felt very fortunate that I had a medical understanding. It's comforting to know that death isn't necessarily painful.
Or scary in some other way. And I'm thinking what you said, Marg, about your religious background and what you probably had got from the Catholic perspective about the afterlife and so on, which might be scary, I don't know.
No, I used to think it'd be gin and tonics and cigarettes. That's what I was looking forward to.
And now you think it might not be?
I think now it may not be at all, no.
Jude, you were talking a lot about living like you were dying. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, I think it's just coming to terms with the preciousness of life and the finality of death for me. I've read this book on from a psychiatrist called Irvin Yalom, who himself has had death anxiety. And so he's written this book. He's about 95 or 96 now. So he's had an amazing life. He wrote this book called Staring into the Sun, where he addresses this death anxiety. So he talks about, we've all had regrets, major or minor regrets, through our life. But he said, even from today onwards, try to live a regret-free life. I think that's where my focus is now. What am I going to do for the next 5 years at least? How am I going to manage that? I don't want to have regrets.
So it's about having a good death, but equally important is to have a good life to the end. Is that's really what opening up this whole area for talking is about, maximising what's left of our lives?
I think so. And there's a huge number of programs on how to do that too. I do just want to hark back a little bit on some of the death anxiety. And one thing I don't really want for myself is to die alone, but it may happen. But I don't want other people to die alone, because I think it's not just the pain. My father died alone, and I just am so sorry that happened.
Cafe Mortal and other death cafe groups are creating a kind of community, like a supportive community, so that you're not alone in your thoughts even at the end.
That's right. There's a real sense of community about it and sharing.
That suggests to me that the taboo about talking about death and dying is not as strong as it was. Do you feel that? Do you feel like more people are talking about this topic?
Not really, no. And, you touched on, Jane, the language, he passed. Well, where the hell did he pass? What? Past a chair? Past a table?
Past wind?
He's dead. It's like we've got this sanitised way of talking about death. And we used to say, he died on Tuesday. But we don't say that. Well, when I say we do. But the radio and print media, it's still past.
How did we move from it being much more open and part of life to this, we have to be careful about the words we use and we have to be sensitive to how did that happen?
Now how long's a piece of string, Jane? It's become more fearful, dying or death for people, and it's easier to kind of say, no, he passed peacefully.
You read the death notices in the paper, which I occasionally do because I'm old.
My daughter reads them every Saturday. She lets me know who I know has died.
And it's all, this language like passed peacefully and it's never died on Tuesday, is it?
No, it's not. No, it's not.
There's an element, I think, for younger people to, in your early 40s or, young, to think that you can live forever. And modern medicine, young people take for granted. Medicine can do just about anything, which we know it can't. We looked into, didn't we? And, you could go and you can have yourself frozen and prepared for, so there's another element in society that defies death, and perhaps in those younger years when it's out there, they don't want to talk about it because they're so busy living. And in fact, when you say Cafe Mortal, everyone sort of thinks, oh, how depressing, what are you doing? It's far the opposite.
Why would you want to gather in a cafe and spoil a perfectly good cup of coffee with talking about dying?
Well, yes, but as you can see, it was so much more. I think that's what people don't realise. And I think the actual broader death cafes, perhaps a lot of them are working as support groups that people go to because they're not coping with grieving about death or grieving of someone in the family. So they function on another level as well as to a more intimate group like ours.
You would hope, wouldn't you, that the more you talk about this topic, the more normalised it becomes and therefore frees people to talk.
I also wonder if our generation has been more protected. We're baby boomers, we've come after the war, but I didn't go to a funeral until I was well into my 20s, and I think I was just protected.
And that's what parents felt they should do, was somehow to protect us. I'm not sure from what, from being sad.
I've found whenever I've mentioned it to broader people, they're always really interested and want to know what we're doing.
I would like to say that we're not done yet.
No.
We're not done. We've still got a whole lot of topics to do.
It goes on evolving, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right. And topics come out of maybe the session before or something like that. So we deviate. I mean, we had this lovely sort of chronological order. Well, we've hopped around and this and that and, So, but it's been fun. It's been fun and we've had a few laughs and we've all brought something to the group. We've got lovely poems, we've had music, we've had art. It's just been, whoever runs it their way and it's nice.
And also I think probably people think of, attending a group about death and dying as being gloom and doom, but actually what's coming across is it's the opposite and you have a lot of fun and a lot of laughs.
One of the key things that really I wanted to be part of it because the five of us are very diverse people and just to have that motivation of hearing the creativity and this one going and doing, all this extra research and things is absolutely fantastic. And that's that broadening of your curiosity. And am I sure about what I think? This helps you to say, okay, we've gone and looked at all of this and I'm feeling very comfortable.
What is something that you would like to do before you die? Yes, what about you? What would be something you'd like to do before you die?
I think I'm just on a steady path of putting into practice of having a great contentment, and it's an ongoing thing, just keeping that balance of just my everyday life. And I'm very privileged. I have a great life. I've done lots of travelling, and so it's making the most of every day.
Jude?
Well, I think I'd like to put my autobiography somehow together, just for the family, which my mother did, and I just remember she finished off with Jeff Fenwick's famous statement, "And I loves you all." But also, I'm having a bit of a discussion with my husband because I do love going to Italy, and I would like to have a little bit of my ashes scattered somewhere there, but he's not actually so enthused about taking them there.
I think what I'd like to be better at being me, not being as impatient. I get in that car and I think, oh, for God's sake, they're all so slow and what are they turning right and trying to be, just to be a better version of who I am without changing too much. Just trying to be more patient and think a bit more deeply about certain things. I do tend to pack things in so I don't have to think because I'm busy. And so I know that that's an issue, it's something I'm trying to work on, is to actually plan some reflection time. But I do want to reflect on how to be a better human.
A big thank you to Hazel, Jude and Marg from Cafe Mortal for joining us on Passing Thoughts. It was an absolute hoot and pleasure to be there for the recording of this episode. Thanks also to Jane Mundy, our contributor. Jane somehow managed to keep the Cafe Mortal woman on track during today's episode. Before we go, Marg from Cafe Mortal shared her thoughts on her funeral many years in the future.
I was going to have, I'm not going to do it now because it's a different funeral, but I was going to have gorgeous young men with champagne poured so that people would have it as they went into the ceremony instead of all the, and then you have a drink afterwards. But now that I don't think I'm doing that either. But it was, and I had special money set aside for my funeral. Claudia, my youngest, who's 47, so she's not a baby, and she said, I found the perfect funeral for you. And I said, oh, good, darling, where? And I rang these people. It was in Victoria, where you can have a marching band to go in front of the coffin. And I thought, what a wonderful idea. So I rang them, and but they said, no, that they don't work in Sydney. Of course, I want to have a party where you play music and people can give a eulogy or do whatever they want to do, but maybe so that's how I've changed. So maybe I'm not locked into this yet, Jane, but have a small family just with the kids, not because I've got 1 million brothers and sisters, and when they're all together it's 28 of us. I don't want all that. I just want my children, really. At the whatever it is, cremation-y thingy, and then the rest can all come to the fireworks and somewhere at Woolwich, probably at the Woolwich deck house. So I'm thinking of hiring the deck house, or someone will have to do that, and that's where the music can be, and some nice food and champagne, and they can talk. People can say, oh, she was so lovely, we loved having, whatever. As I say to my husband, I'm not leaving it to you, John. I know you'll go to water.
In our next episode, Connie Mason talks with Welsh ICU doctor and author Dr. Matt Morgan about what happens to people when they die and come back to life.
There's definitely a fog between life and death, I guess. And often that's that flash moment that you realise something bad is happening.
Passing Thoughts is made with the support of the Wicking Trust and the team from 2RPH. A big thank you to Marty, Veronica and station manager Barry. And just a reminder, we'd love to hear from you. If you have feedback, topic suggestions or want to share your own experiences, email us at passingthoughts@2rph.org.au. Don't forget to rate and review Passing Thoughts on your favourite podcasting app. It really helps others find out about the show. Our Facebook page includes photos and ongoing conversations around the topic of death and dying. You'll find the link in the show notes. I'm Rob Caldor. Thanks for listening.
This is a Radio 2RPH production.